So in this training, we're going to go over communication flow. So the communication flow is basically the sequence in what you're going to do to communicate with clients. So we're going to go over how to handle client communications, the communication chart, and client timelines and managing timelines as well as expectations with clients. So when it comes to updates, communication with updates includes like results for clients to celebrate. Like, hey, we got these results for you. Let's celebrate them, and like letting them know. General updates about processes without professionally going into specifics, using key language like our creative team, our technical team, or like our operations team, or just in general, like our team. You can just say like our team. The phrase process or like it's in process. So this phase of your onboarding is at the mock-up process, and we're going to get you some creative mock-ups so you can see your ads and proof them, and then we can go ahead and launch your ads. Would be an example, right? That's an update. When we do like one-off projects with clients, we do like done with you style projects with clients where we help them maybe build out their tracking, their data tracking, or we help them just build a single campaign, something like this for like a lower cost. We're not like managing their whole ads. It's just a simple project. And commonly we do projects like that, like on Upwork or on Fiverr and like freelancer.com, like these third-party platforms are very common. And what we do basically is like when we do those projects, we update them every 24 hours. Even if there's really nothing happening, it's the same thing with onboarding clients. You need to update people every 24 hours. You need to let them know, because there's usually an action item that they need to take anyway that you need to like get results from them on. Or our team is working on something, like, so you can update them every 24 hours and say, hey, just to give you a quick update, our team is still working on setting up your metapixel for data tracking. Or to, give you a quick update, our creative team is still working through your collateral to generate some nice advertising graphics and videos, right? Some nice video ads, just to give you an update. So updates are really important in following the communication flow. And then questions about details of updates. So limit the details to simple language that does not go into depth. Your language should not be like longer than like several sentences or less in an email, for example. So if somebody says, hey, I haven't heard anything for about a day or so, where are we at with my ads? You'd email them back in just 2 sentences. Our team is in the process of getting the mock-ups finished. I should have them to you hopefully in the next 48 hours, and I'll update you tomorrow as well. Or I'll be speaking with you on Friday or something like that. You got to make sure you're communicating timelines so that people feel confident that you're taking care of them. Never discuss like who our vendors are, what the specific software use is, what the process flow is, like how we use standard operating procedures. It sounds very unprofessional and it looks like an excuse. Okay, so you should be limiting the details of our process, and really you should just be very simple in telling them about the result that they're going to get, because what the client really cares about is the result that they're going to get. They don't care how we get there. They just want to know that they're going to get their result that they've paid for with our agency. When are we going to launch their ads? What are we doing with the management? Hey, our team is working on improving that cost per lead for you so it's cheaper. Or our team is working on changing up the ads to get you better quality leads. If they are asking, hey, my lead quality is bad, you guys said you were working on it. Well, our team is working on it. If they really want detail, they're like, well, how is your team working on it? When people ask more detail, they have questions about details of the update. They say, well, how are you getting that done? They might say how. They might ask how. You only go one layer deep. You don't give lots of details. You just say, well, our technical team is working on that. If they're like, well, I want to know how you guys are getting these videos done. Well, our creative team works on them. Okay. And then makes these high quality creatives. You don't go into saying, well, it's this company called Kimp.io and we have a special Trello board with them and we put the project in and then somebody works on it and a guy named Peter is the project manager. Never go into details like that with a client. If you're doing that, you're not going to be able to work in the agency and we're going to have to let you go. Well, okay. Sharing those kinds of details with clients is totally unprofessional. So agreement to perform work and explaining the scope as far as communication goes, be careful to examine the client's general profile. Like take a look at we keep a profile document in ClickUp under each client folder that's a general profile. Make sure that if you're just getting familiar with the client, you read through their general profile every time. If you're onboarding them, you actually create that profile a lot of times. And then if needed, refer to the scope of work in the letter of engagement. If you really need to look at like what we've promised to do for the client, as well as any like meeting recordings. So make sure as you get into communication flows with clients, you've already reviewed their initial discovery recording, which is really important. Usually it's a longer call that I do with the client to do their strategy, to set up their strategy. So make sure you're watching discovery calls with the client. And maybe the initial launch call with the client. If you're taking over management, operations of the client account from onboarding, watch the onboarding call or the launch call so you get a good context in addition to my discovery call. When you do that, you can watch these videos with the client at feel free to jump around. There might be like gaps where there's no talking happening at the beginning of the Zoom call before everybody joins. And then when everybody's talking, if the talking is going slow, you can 1.5 or 2 times speed. Just make sure you can still understand what people are saying, even if they're talking faster as you increase the speed of the video. But make sure you're reviewing these things and you're looking at the general profile. You're reviewing their strategic documents even too to see their consumer profile before you just start jumping into communication flows with clients, because what can happen is you might misspeak or you might, not understand the client goals and lay something out that the client understands right away that you don't know what's going on. And then they feel like you're not the right person to take care of them anymore. So make sure you're very confident and you understand, what's in their general profile. You've reviewed the discovery, you've reviewed their strategic documents, you know what's going on. Confirm completion of work and next steps with like positive celebrations. So when you're confirming completion of work, explain the next step. So you can when you're celebrating things, like you can say, hey, if you're doing onboarding for a client, for example, and you say, hey, we got your data tracking set up, the metapixels firing. Here's a screenshot of the test in the event center, confirms that it's working properly. The next step is we're going to go ahead and have your mock-ups approved, right? Just as an example. Sometimes maybe the process depends on where you're at with the client, might be a little bit different than that. But generally speaking, you're going to say, hey, next step is to look at mock-ups. We should have those over to you in probably 3 or 4 working days. And I'll let you know as we go along. You'll hear from me tomorrow as well with an update. So that's timeline communication. Always set a timeline of expectation with clients, making them aware of like not only when to expect to hear from you, what kind of communication they're going to get next. You'll get an email from me tomorrow afternoon with an update. My estimated time, always say estimated time because there's always variables, and you say approximately, or my estimated time to get you these mock-ups is in 3 to 4 working days. Otherwise, you'll still be hearing an update from me tomorrow and the next day in regards to anything else. So make sure like within that language, I'll give you another example. You might say, I will check with the team and you'll hear back from me tomorrow afternoon regarding the ad launch specifics, so I can give you better answer in regards to when the data tracking is to be set up. And then make sure you're tracking these timelines, like set a reminder in your Google Calendar. You can change the due dates in your ClickUp tasks, which you need to do, because if you get overdue due dates, your team leader or myself or like a manager is going to come and follow up with you and say, why are your assigned tasks going overdue? And if you consistently have overdue due dates, we're going to replace you with a different CSR because you're not managing due dates and you're behind on tasks, okay? Or we're going to offset your workload because you're obviously like you have too much on your plate if you just have a bunch of overdue tasks. So make sure you're using these reminder tools though, so that you are sending the follow-up communication and reminders to the clients, like Just don't just try to remember that you're just going to follow up with them. Set a due date in ClickUp, or set a reminder in your Google Calendar and make sure you do it. Okay. When a timeline changes or like an update comes down the pipeline, you want to update the client immediately. Like, let's say creative team comes back and says, hey, looks like this video that you're requesting, it's actually going to take like 4 working days because you have several other projects in queue. That extends the date with the client. Contact them and say, hey, we're looking at an additional 4 days. Again, don't go into specifics. You're just telling them about the results. Okay. It's unprofessional to go into details. You don't want to, just because you're updating a timeline or giving something that might seem like bad news, it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad news to the client. You're just updating them, and they usually just appreciate it. So you could just go and say, hey, it looks like your creative team, just based on the changes you've requested, we're going to have that back to you in about 3 to 4 working days. Okay. Thanks. You don't have to apologize for timeline changes. Don't do that, because it indicates that it's like your fault somehow. Okay. Don't assume fault for something that's not necessarily bad news, because you're actually creating a negative situation where there is none. All right. Don't do that. Just simply say, hey, just giving you an update. Looks like with the changes requested, it's going to be about an additional 3 days, and I'll keep you updated. That's it. If the client says, well, why is that? You might say, well, you requested some changes to this and we need to implement them. And so the creative team is implementing them. And with their current workload, this is what they quoted me. And that's it. You don't have to go into anything else. Okay. You don't want to say, I'm sorry. Normally it only takes 2 days and this doesn't normally happen, but I'm going to keep you updated. Now you're making it look like we're doing something wrong. It's all our fault, and they shouldn't be experiencing this. Okay, that's where you actually create an unhappy client where there would have been none if you just communicated it in a very simple, straightforward manner without going into too much detail. Just saying, hey, looks like the results that you want, it's going to take an extra 4 days. Okay, so just make sure you're to the point there. All right. So that's going to wrap the communication flow training. I'm going to go over the chart with you. I'll show you the communication flow chart and explain that a little bit. Just touch on that real quick because it's something that you'll go back to over and over. And it's what my expectation is of you when you're trying to get results with a client where they need to take an action and you're having trouble getting to the next step in a process because you need the client to take an action. I'm going to show you that chart now. Okay, so this is the communication flow as it stands. As far as, we've covered so far to this point, I covered kind of why you might be communicating with clients as far as updates go, clarification of things, and this is to push action items forward here. So you might be approving a creative mock-up, as you'll see here, setting a Zoom meeting, like maybe you need to get on a Zoom meeting with them because like when we onboard clients, you need to make sure we can interact in their business manager as a partner, confirming their advertising budget, like maybe the media buyer needs to know how much money we're spending on ads. And then you need to go ahead and make sure you verify that with the client. Usually we do that in the discovery call with the client, and you're required as the CSR to watch the discovery call with the client, my initial strategy call with them. Anytime you're dealing with a client, if you're onboarding them or you're taking over operations with them, watch that call. Okay, it's in the Google Drive folder for their initial meeting. Gaining access maybe to a platform, like let's say they are an e-commerce client, they have a Shopify store, and we need our developer to set up Conversions API or data tracking. Well, we need developer access to that backend, and so they need to go ahead and give us access to it through our support at Acceleration Enterprises email, and then we share that with the developer in turn. Okay, so all of that is super important. And then you're going to run into these situations where like the client isn't responsive. Like you're trying to ask them to do these things, you're trying to push the process forward, and you just can't get a hold of them. Well, the first step, is you're going to email them. Okay. And maybe if you're trying to book a Zoom call for like a launch, like onboarding a client, or maybe proofing creatives, they want to go over it with you on a Zoom call, and you're like, okay, well, you need to book a call with me. And you share your booking link with them by email. Well, if you don't see a call booked or you don't hear back from them in 24 hours, and that's why you need to keep track of this stuff, you need to make notes in your ClickUp task. Okay, and like change the due date of the ClickUp task to like the next day. So the next day you get a notification, hey, these are your tasks for the day. Because if you leave things in overdue status in your task, you just end up with a big list of overdue tasks that you're not keeping track of. So make sure you're changing the due date of your tasks to like the next day, and make a note in there in your comments. Need to follow up with the client by text message. The second step is that you use our Google Voice account connected to the support at accelerationenterprises.com Google account. Log into Google Voice and you send them a text message. Hey, sent you an email. Haven't heard back from you. Here's the link by text message so you can go ahead and book with me in this example. Again, update your ClickUp task. Move the due date up so it doesn't become overdue. Make a note. Sent a text message on this date. Maybe even take a screenshot of it. Throw it in the comment just for reference. And I like to document communication like this because sometimes clients will come back and say, you guys never talked to me. And this is total, I'm totally angry about this or whatever. And it's really good for us to be able to go into the client account and ClickUp and say, actually, there's a record. We texted you, we called you, and here's the record. So make sure you're documenting your communication as you're trying to get action items done with the client. If you don't hear back from them for another 24 hours, go back to your ClickUp task the next day. What's due today? Oh, got to follow up with this client. Call them on the Google Voice. You're actually going to call them. Make sure you identify yourself. You're like, hey, this is Chris with Acceleration Enterprises. Calling because texted you yesterday, didn't hear back from you. So can we go ahead and book that call now? Let's just schedule that Zoom meeting now, and go ahead and schedule it with them, right? Or, hey, can we look at these creatives right now? I got these mock-ups. Do you have time? Right now we can do it. I'll just start a Zoom meeting. Or maybe if you don't have time, let's book it now. Let's just take, 30 seconds to schedule it. Always identify yourself on the call. Always try to get done. Now, if nobody answers and they don't answer, always leave a voicemail. Always leave a voicemail. Identify yourself, state the nature of your call, what you're trying to accomplish, and then just wish them a good day and let them know you'll be in touch. Let's say you don't hear from them for another 24 hours. Well, you start the cycle again. Send them an email. Hey, just following up again by email. Left you a voicemail yesterday. Start reiterating your other types of communication. Also sent you a text message the day before. This is really important. We kind of need to get on board with this, right? And you follow this flow until you reach the goal, whatever that is. Like maybe you need to proof the creatives, get approval from them. Maybe you need access to a back end on their platform and you finally get the login and the password, or they send you developer access, whatever the case may be. Once you get there, you can stop this flow. Okay. So I hope this is helpful. This PDF, make sure that you download it for yourself from the training, save it, reference it. So you need to follow this with clients, and you're required to as a CSR, client success representative. Anytime we're trying to accomplish things with the client, if the client is non-responsive and they're hard to deal with, and that's what you're telling me, that a task is overdue and it's not getting done, that means you're not trying hard enough and you're not following this process. And I expect to see proof of this process, and so does your team leader, when we go to check on overdue tasks that aren't getting done with clients, to see, okay, well, are you following the communication flow? Are you following up with the client like you're supposed to? Because it's up to you and it's your responsibility to make sure that we get deadlines accomplished for clients, whether they're good at communication or bad at communication. It's your job to be excellent at communication. All right, thanks.